Open Your Eyes is brought to you by the Belize Bank. Our country, your bank.
Good morning. Welcome to Open Your Eyes.
Start your morning right.
I'm Marlene Cuellar.
And I'm Gavin Courtney.
And thank you for joining us this morning.
Yep. It's a really nice morning up here, I found. Yeah,
I was expecting to find rain this morning, not so.
Yeah, especially how it's been since the weekend.
Yeah.
But yeah, it looks like the weather is turning around a little bit, and hopefully we'll get some good news later when we have our weather forecast.
Yeah, well, let's not jinx it just yet. We got to get through a forecast and they'll keep us updated.
Right.
But we are in the hurricane season, halfway through the first month, of course, of the hurricane season. And it is always important that we keep on reminding viewers and everyone that the best time to prepare for the season is before we face the threat of a storm.
Absolutely. It's never too early to be prepared or to at least make a plan. So you want to be prepared in the event or of the worst case scenario, which is, of course, a storm hitting directly wherever you are.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, I still reflect on the conversation that we had with the Red Cross when they came in with a backpack full of items, 3 days for 3 people, and I think he estimated he spent about $50 to $60 on it. Just keeping in mind that he covered the major food groups and had it ready and put aside if you do have to evacuate your home because of a storm. It is, of course, mid-month, and some people do collect their salaries around this time. Start putting something aside. I know it's a tough time to talk about sparing anything extra. But if we do come under the threat of a storm, it's going to be money and items that you're going to have to purchase anyway. So the earlier you start, the less of a burden it'll be around that time.
Yes, and do make sure that you do have a plan. If it is that you need to stay in a hurricane shelter, make sure that you've identified the ones nearest to you. If you have another plan, perhaps you are going to move to higher ground if you're living along the coastal areas and you are staying with family or whoever, have that plan in place. If you're going to stay at home, ensure that you have all of the supplies that are necessary, and that's food, essentials, things that you probably might not even think about in the moment, but you know, the Red Cross does have its brochure, and there's a lot of other resources that you can find even online about how to best be prepared for the season.
That's right. All right, but of course, other things that are happening, the recent donation of COVID-19 vaccines, 100,000 more vaccinations available for Belizeans, coming from Mexico. And I do have to say, this morning I was reading over the reports from Chetumal, and they are actually closing down their main street due to an increase in COVID cases in the past 2 weeks. So they're doing their own version of a lockdown. One of their hospitals reported that they're at 100% capacity for COVID cases, and that's with beds with ventilators. So clearly, you know, this is not the time to let our guard down. And coupled with maintaining all your protocols, it is absolutely important that you get out and get vaccinated as well.
Absolutely. And with this with this other donation, I should say, of an additional 100,000 vaccines, of course, it does put all of us closer to our target of reaching 70% of the adult population being vaccinated. It puts us closer to making that happen, but of course everything can be made available, but it still depends on us to go out and get vaccinated. Last week on our show, if you recall, some of our own members of the Channel 5 team received their second dose, and they're okay, right, Marlene?
Yeah,
You're still okay?
I had one day where it was a little, like, you know, I felt not my best, and after that, I woke up fine. In fact, I think most of us didn't have any side effects. You know, it's dependent on each one. I can't tell you that you won't get a fever or chills or achy. That was my experience. But if you compare fever, aches, and chills to what you can potentially face if you develop a severe case of COVID, it's worth it to take a night of fever. You know, speaking of which, yesterday there was a report of an additional COVID death in the country, and you know, another unfortunate case where a family is mourning a loved one, and we know with COVID-19 protocols, it's such a tough way to lose someone because you can't be with them at their bedside. You know, you say goodbye very often through technology, and then there's all the process in place for COVID-19 burials as well. So it's a really hard way to lose a loved one. Losing a loved one is tough either way, but especially under these circumstances. So getting vaccinated helps to protect you from not facing that type of circumstance, and also helps you to protect others in your family as well, so that they don't have to face such the possibility of such circumstances.
Yes, absolutely. And just a reminder that we are still in phase 3 of the vaccine rollout. So if you do qualify, please find your nearest vaccination center. There are resources that help you, that would enable you to learn where is the nearest place where you can go out and get. And actually, very importantly, some of the nurses from the healthcare, from the public health sector who were here last week also told us is that if you perhaps are living with somebody who's very high risk, perhaps somebody who's very elderly or may not be able to go out and access the services from your nearest clinic, that some nurses are actually doing house visits, and if you call the ministry, they may be able to facilitate that for you. So if that is the concern, and that you're unable, and that you or somebody that you know is unable to get out, do try and contact the ministry to make arrangements to see what they can provide in order for you or your loved one to get vaccinated, because they have been trying to be very accommodating given the importance of the vaccine.
Yes, so that's what we know so far. It'll be interesting to see what they do with the new vaccines. As you said, they are still in phase 3. There are frontline workers, teachers, police who still have to get vaccinated, people with comorbidities, elderly population. They're all people who work in the tourism sector. They can all get access to their vaccines. So. But I do know a lot of young people who are patiently waiting, and I mean young as an adult, but still interested in getting the vaccine, and people who don't qualify for those 3 phases. So I wonder if now with the 100,000, if they're going to open it up and just let those who are open to getting the vaccine get the process started and get us closer to herd immunity.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And of course, with the phases, do ensure that you are paying attention to who all qualifies in what category, because you may not even know. For instance, if you work in the tourism sector, if you are, a public officer, media, you are eligible at this time in this phase of the rollout. So go online, listen to the radio, find out if you qualify, and if you do, go out there and get vaccinated.
That's right. Okay, but we got to get moving into our show for today, and we're going to get things started with some motivation, and that means it's time for Our Eye Opener. Our Eye Opener, taken from dailyom.com, goes like this. To acknowledge that we have judged and why is the first step to a path of compassion. Though it is human to evaluate people we encounter based on first impressions, the conclusions we come to are seldom unaffected by our own fears and our own preconceptions. Additionally, our judgments are frequently incomplete. For example, wealth can seem like proof that an individual is spoiled, and poverty can be seen as a signifier of laziness, neither of which may be true. At the heart of the tendency to categorize and criticize we often find insecurity. We are quick to pass judgment on others. We forget that they, like us, are human beings. As we seldom know what roads people have traveled before a shared encounter or why they have come into our lives, we should always give those we meet the gift of an open heart. Doing so allows us to replace fear-based criticism with appreciation, because we can then focus wholeheartedly on the spark of good that burns in all human souls.
That's a really nice eye-opener. And I think it's a good reminder, because when if you think about most negative criticism, especially if it's personal or something, a lot of the times it's just people projecting, and it often time comes from an insecurity or something personally that affects them, that perhaps is unaddressed, or it hasn't been dealt with properly, so they sort of take out the frustration with that situation on others. I think that's kind of also why people are like hypersensitive to certain criticisms as well. But I think that when it comes to judgment and being overly critical, it oftentimes reflects on the person who is the critic. And I think that if you think about that when you do have a negative opinion of somebody else, or what they're doing or what they're wearing or something like that, then you have to think about where that comes from within you. You think about, why did I have that thought, or what's really the problem, with what it is that I'm noticing. And if it's not really a problem, and if it's not hurting anybody, it's not you, and you can slow down and examine, well, why is it that I have an issue with that? And when you do take that time to self-reflect, you can often find that what it is perhaps something that's a problem internally, and it's not something that's a problem with somebody else.
Yeah.
And through that discovery process, then you can engage and try to do better and try to do kinder. And you realize that when you put out more positive energy, then it just benefits everybody.
Yeah. I once read that your mind kind of does these snap judgments because naturally, as human beings, we can't process every single thing that we encounter. And so, you meet people and your mind kind of goes on autopilot. X, is followed by Y, or this means that. And the challenge, though, I think, is being able to catch yourself and recognize that you, especially when we're dealing with new people, you can't swear by it. You can't see one person. I think they give the example of socioeconomic status. It could also be things like race, ethnicity, where people are from, language that people speak. You can't just see them and believe that every single person who fits this profile equals this personality. And we owe it to them, and we owe it to ourselves very often to give them a chance. Now, you may not have the time to invest in getting to know them, but just know that just because you have assumed this is what they are, that doesn't mean they are. And very often people are doing the same thing to us either way.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I think that, if you think about it from that sense, then it makes it, I think it gives you even more of an impetus to be kinder to people, because you wouldn't want to be judged by that, or in that same sort of a harsh way. And as I say that, it just comes to mind that we are often our own worst critics as well. And if we start and we don't change that sort of unhealthy pattern of really criticizing ourselves, then of course we're going to also do that to other people. So if you think about it like that, then I think, like what Marlene said, is that you have to give people the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
You have to try to treat people with kindness, and it starts really with you. Yeah. So, if you're in a good place, then you're more likely to treat others better as well.
Or use the opposite. Imagine if someone meets you on your worst day. A day that you don't feel well, a day that you're struggling with some sort of loss, a day that maybe you're overwhelmed or sinking into a depression or very anxious at the moment. Imagine somebody meeting you at that moment and them deciding that that's who you are definitively. that level of empathy very often, it just takes a moment to kind of change your perspective. Takes work, takes effort, but it definitely is worth the while because you never know who might actually be someone that you can connect with.
Yeah.
All right, so that is the eye-opener for this morning, and it's time for us to get moving into our weather. We have Crystal Rosales on the line. Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
Well,
Hi, Crystal.
How are you today?
Hi, I'm good, thank you.
All right. So let's get into our forecast for this morning. What does our general situation look like?
Moist and unstable conditions continue over the area.
And our winds?
Winds will be from the east to southeast at 10 to 20 knots, and the sea conditions will be moderate.
Okay. Let's talk about our temperatures then. What are we expecting for highs today?
Today we'll reach 88 degrees Fahrenheit along the coast, 93 inland, and 78 in the mountains.
And the low temperatures?
Tonight will be 79 along the coast, 74 inland, and 68 in the hills.
Okay. And as we head into the middle of the week, what can we expect for our extended forecast?
We're going to continue with that trend of showers increasing at night and then decreasing during the daytime. And going into like Thursday, Friday, then we're going to have like a general decrease after that.
Okay. Well, that's a bit of good news.
So is there an area where the rain will be concentrated? Because it's pretty sunny in Belize City right now.
Well, for today and tomorrow, we just expect isolated activity during the daytime with a few more over the north and inland, and then again the increase at night over most places. But you're asking for the concentration. It's mostly north and inland.
Oh, okay. And do we, of course it is the hurricane season, are we looking or at anything that's concerning perhaps in the greater Atlantic area?
Well, we do have Tropical Storm Bill, which at 3 a.m. this morning, it was located near 38.5 north latitude and longitude 67.2 west, or about 240 miles southeast of Nantucket, Massachusetts. Bill was moving to the northeast at 31 miles per hour with maximum sustained winds of 50 miles per hour.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. That's an early start.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Crystal, thank you so much for giving us that update.
You're welcome.
All right, and we hope you have a great day.
All right, thank you. You as well.
Okay. There you have it.
Yep. So it still looks like there still might be a few showers up until the end of the week.
Don't let the sun fool you. There are showers coming. If you're in the north or inland, you'll probably see a little bit more, but along the coast and the rest of the country, there still is the possibility of isolated showers and thunderstorms. And at nighttime, there is expected to be an increase. All right, but it is time for us to get moving into our show for today.
Yep. And we are going to start off our show this morning with a conversation with the chairman of the board of the Carl Huchner Memorial Hospital, and he's going to be giving us an update all on what's been going on there, because as you know, there has been a lot of changes which the hospital is undergoing at the moment. So we'll be getting an update from him in our first conversation.
All right, the second part of our show, we're going to be joined by the outgoing Chargé d'Affaires of the U.S. Embassy in Belize. Keith Gilgis will be with us, and we'll get to talk with him about his experience and his thoughts on Belize and what he will take away with him the most.
And finally, we are going to be talking all about sea turtles, and we are going to be getting an update from some conservationists as it is, or sorry, and we are celebrating sea turtles, and we're going to be learning all about them and how we can help them go on. So that's going to be our final conversation for this morning.
All right, so that's what we have in store for you this morning. We're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we'll be joined by the chairman of the KHMH. So please stay tuned.
It's a fact that with Smart, you get truly unlimited everything. Only with Smart, you get unlimited data anytime, while with the other guy, it's only double data on weekends. With unlimited data every day with Smart, there's no need to wait. So, it's a fact that our unlimited plans beat the competition. Stop being measured and told when to use your data and get unlimited talk, text, and data. Experience the true unlimited plans with Smart. That's a fact. Make the switch and live smart.
Good morning, sweetie. It's time for school.
Are you a teacher or public sector employee who is thinking of owning your new home? Get the keys to your new home with Belize Bank's all-inclusive mortgage, the best financing option in Belize for your new home purchase or construction. Inclusive of all mortgage-related fees, no down payment, affordable terms, amazingly low interest rates. Visit our nearest branch to speak to one of our financial advisors to discuss how you can be one step closer to owning your new home. Some conditions apply.
Thanks, Jen. Hey there, we know you have to head out to work shortly, but don't forget that you can stay tuned by watching us on our Facebook live stream. Find us at Open Your Eyes BC, and you can continue watching there. You can also download Facebook Watch on your streaming device, and you can watch at your own convenience.
And for all the behind-the-scenes fun, follow us on Instagram at OYE Belize. So,
find us
and follow us
today.
When someone you love becomes a memory, the memory becomes a treasure. Channel 5 introduces the Daily Obituaries. The Daily Obituaries will broadcast all death and funeral announcements and memorials to honor your loved one's life and memories. The Daily Obituaries airs on Channel 5 prior to the evening newscast, with subsequent repeats at 10 p.m. and 12 noon the following day. It will also be placed online on our social media platforms, all for a standard package fee. Celebrate their lives and memories with Channel 5's Daily Obituaries. Honor in life and reverence in death.
Dwayne Moody, Isani Cayetano, Andrea Polanco, Paul Lopez. Your News 5 Belize teams do whatever it takes. Go wherever they need to go, so you can catch the story wherever you are, whenever you want, on whatever device. Channel 5 Belize on television, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Because news is now everywhere, all the time. And so are we.
Today's COVID update is brought to you by Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price, but stay for the service.
And we are back. And if you're joining us right now, we are getting our first conversation for this morning started. And we are joined by Dr. Andre Sosa, who is the chairman of the board of the Carl Huescher Memorial Hospital. And we are going to be talking a little bit about some of what's going on at the hospital right now. Good morning, Dr. Sosa.
Good morning, Gavin. Good morning, Marlene. Good morning, viewers.
Yeah, and thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it, especially because we know there's a lot going on at KHMH right now. And perhaps we can start by talking about what has been making news a lot recently, and that is the departure of a large number of nurses from the hospital, or the imminent departure, I should say. And let's start by talking a little bit about that situation and if we should be concerned.
Okay. First of all, there's always a lot going on in Carl Huescher. It's like a little city, and people don't often appreciate all the moving parts that are in action there. So that is something we're already accustomed to. The situation with nursing is indeed one of concern, and that is in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. There is always movement of nurses, but what we are seeing right now is the confluence of a number of different factors, including the fact that there is very aggressive recruitment going on in the United States, in the UK, primarily, where there is an acute shortage of nurses as well. This is a worldwide problem. So with the greater facility for movement now from those countries, we are seeing a number of the nurses working here presently moving out. That includes Belizean nationals, as well as expatriate nurses who had been recruited previously here. Unfortunately, all of this comes at a time when some issues have come to the head as well. There is a great deal of dissatisfaction, I should say, primarily amongst the Filipino nurses here, but also other foreign nurses who are seeing attempts at enforcing regulations with regards to the licensing. To be fair, this is an issue that has been going on for at least the last couple of years, but what is being said is that there are attempts now to try and enforce those regulations. Obviously, it's not an opportune time for this to happen, and we believe at Carl Huescher that is part of what is creating dissatisfaction and is spurring an even greater number of nurses to depart from our institution.
What's the number that we're looking at right now?
Well, to the 31st of May, we are looking at 21 resignations of nurses. There has been an aggressive recruitment effort, and we have managed to recruit 12 full-time nurses and 7 part-time nurses. To the end of June, we foresee that there will be at least 12 more resignations. We hope to be able to fill the gap with the graduating class of nurses from UB. We are told by Nurse Bell, the Chief Nursing Officer, that there will be 40 graduates, and that priority will be given to the KHMH to be able to recruit these nurses. There are no posts available in the public sector, and that gives us at the KHMH a certain advantage to be able to recruit at least a large number, we hope, of these nurses. But we also have an externship program at the KHMH, and what it is that we hire or we create positions for these nurses who have graduated but who are still waiting to take their exams. Presently, there are 8 positions for these young nurses. The board has recently voted to expand the number of positions to 15. So that is a stopgap measure. But also we have temporary positions for PCAs, primary care assistants, and that also helps to some extent. So if the situation does not deteriorate in terms of the COVID pandemic, then perhaps we will be able to fill the gaps. The problem, however, is if we have a full-out outbreak of COVID, whereby we will need to staff the COVID unit, and then we would be looking at a need for at least 30 more nurses.
And will they be available in country?
Probably not.
Well, that's a question I have. So, you know, as the chair of the board, have you made a recommendation to the Ministry of Health as to whether or not enforcing the measures are at this time is the best timing for the country and for KHMH? A couple of things that I want to make clear. So the foreign nurses, the nurses who come to Belize, mostly Filipinos, Nigerians, the Cubans come through the Cuban Brigade. Now, they have come into the country and they started working without taking the licensing exam. So they have been practicing. Enforcing it now mid-pandemic seems a bit rigid, understanding that there is a greater need for them. Do you share that opinion, and have you made a recommendation that this is perhaps not the best time to move into formalizing what is the standard?
Well, suffice it to say that we raised the alarm with the Ministry of Health from December of 2020 because, well, we were alerted to this problem by the union at the KHMH and by some of the Filipino nurses as well. So it is a problem that we have been trying to get solved. Unfortunately, given the regulations for nursing, this is a problem that we at the KHMH can't solve on our own. This is something that has to come from the ministry and from the Nursing Council. In principle, we agree with what the Nursing Council is attempting to do, but yes, it is frustrating for us that it is being done at this very moment when we who are tasked with the responsibility of providing the treatment for COVID patients might find ourselves in a very precarious position. In 2020, we saw a large volume of patients. Actually, to date, we have treated 218 patients for COVID, and we are very conscious that if we are indeed at the beginning of a third wave, that we might go back to the precarious days of middle of 2020, when the COVID outbreak was at its worst, at its height.
So that's one of the issues with the nursing shortage that has come to a head. Now, Dr. Sosa, you know, this has not been a problem of today. The nursing shortage has been an issue for a very long time and not unique to Belize either. When you look at the currently employed staff at KHMH, it still isn't sufficient to cover the needs of the patients there when it comes to the nursing staff. What is your hope that, having had this conversation now in the public, that the issue has really come to a head? What is your hope in being able to remedy the situation?
Well, I think one of the measures that the Ministry of Health and Wellness has taken in the last month, which is to announce 50 scholarships for nurses, that's a step in the right direction. And it is something that needs to continue every year, and indeed it needs to be increased. There is a pressing need for not only nurses, but more doctors, more physical therapists, x-ray technicians, lab techs, and so on throughout the country for the health sector. And indeed, there is a large number of unemployed young people who would do well with having those positions and those posts available to work and to be productive members of society. So that is a step in the right direction. With regards to your previous question about how to deal with the impending surge, certainly we need to redouble our efforts, the necessary measures to contain and control spread. That is something that we have advocated about in the COVID task force, of which I am a member, and we have several other persons from KHMH present. Now, the other issue is the need to urgently increase the vaccination process in this country. We need to urgently expand vaccination to the entire population.
Yeah. Now, it is, as we talk about the issue of nursing shortage, that's one aspect, but the other conversation that's brewing coming out of KHMH is looking at the changes that are taking place at the management level. This is the CEO, the director of nursing. I believe you had 2 other senior management staff that are leaving the institution. Now, you're new as the chairman. You assumed that role a few months ago. Explain to us why this is happening now.
Well, I have been at the KHMH for 20 years.
Yes.
So I have had the advantage of living and seeing the problems that exist within the institution. It is an institution that necessarily must undergo rejuvenation every so often. If we look at the fact that from 2016 to today, there is $35 million of outstanding bills that have not been paid. If we look at the fact that just in 2020 alone, there is $9 million of bills that have not been collected. Certainly it was a pandemic year, but if we take the trend of so much money not coming back to us, then it's a crisis. It's a crisis perhaps in slow motion, but it is a crisis nonetheless. And the board feels like it is necessary to shake things up. It is necessary to get a new energy from all the directors in the institution, because we have big dreams and aspirations that are the dreams and aspirations of the Belizean public. The COVID year has taught us that we need to be able to solve problems in country. And to be able to solve these problems, we need to bring up the level of the hospital. And that can only be done with investment, both in terms of monetary investment, but also investment of people, of qualified persons. So that is why the decision has been made that across every aspect of the management of the hospital, that everyone will have to submit themselves to scrutiny before they are able to have a job.
Now, and I know, so we can clearly state that you will say that these contracts were coming to an end this month and within the next few months as well. But from the outside looking in, after a change in administration in the government, people oftentimes will see this as a political play where politically connected persons will be brought in place of these persons who are leaving. How do you respond to that?
Well, you know, that is to be expected. That is true not only for Belize, but across all democracies. Certainly, that is not the spirit in which I see these things. I come from a clinical background, and my commitment to the public is that only the very best people will be able to attain those positions. That is my commitment. I do welcome the scrutiny. Indeed, I wish that more scrutiny can be had not only for the KHMH board, but all the boards that operate across this country. So I welcome the scrutiny. And, you know, they say the proof of the pudding is in the tasting. You know? So we look forward to being held to that higher standard. I think that I can say right now that in July of this year, we plan to do the first kidney transplant in the KHMH, the first kidney transplant in this country. That is where we are looking to go, to provide those services that previously were unavailable in this country. And we can't do that with a wishy-washy attitude, with the just good enough for Belize attitude that has prevailed in this country.
So you were dissatisfied with management?
Well, the fact that we are opening up these posts is not in any way a reflection of dissatisfaction, but rather a need to step up to a higher standard. And all the persons whose contracts have come to an end are welcome to apply again. What we want is a new vigor, a new enthusiasm, and a new way of doing things.
One final question on that issue. How do you respond to the fact that perhaps any management of KHMH will be a victim of the very unique position that KHMH is in, which is it's a statutory body. It's referred to as a national referral hospital. You made a clear distinction earlier about public sector jobs versus KHMH jobs. But it's treated very much as a public hospital. And all the tertiary care, sometimes even secondary care patients end up at the hospital. Bills are hard to collect on. So there's a perception that it's a public hospital when in fact it's not. It should be functioning more along the lines of a private institution. So any management who comes in, they're battling the perception of an entire country that you can just go to KHMH and get your service.
Yeah. Well, and that is precisely why we have to do things differently. Mm-hmm. We want to create a public-private partnership, which might mean having to go beyond the borders of this country to seek those partnerships. And that is something that we have contemplated. Naturally, that means a different mindset. And I will share with you and with the public that our hope, our goal, is that at the end of the next 5 years, the next 4 years, we will have a new building on the KHMH compound. We are at the start of the hurricane season, and the present facilities at KHMH are rated for not more than a Category 2 hurricane, meaning that if there's a Category 3 or more on the way, we have to move everything. The reality though is that our district, there is no capacity to treat or to deal with patients from the ICU, adult ICU, neonatal ICU, pediatric ICU. So that puts our patients in very grave danger if there's a need to move them. That is a situation that has to be remedied. And it will be remedied by constructing a hurricane-resistant multi-story building outfitted with all the best equipment. That is where we need to go. And so we say that a new mindset is needed. It can't be business as usual. Business as usual was okay for the past, but it's not okay for the future.
Where do you imagine the money will come from to be able to construct a new building at KHMH?
Well, we are looking at partnerships with foreign countries. We are looking at partnership with foreign foundations that have already expressed in the past an interest in partnering with us. Of course, that means that there has to be scrupulous management of funds, and it needs careful consideration and guidance. And that is why there is no place for political interference. It has to be above board, and which is why I'm saying that we are open to scrutiny. There has to be full scrutiny. There has to be full transparency. Otherwise, it won't work.
And are there any, well, I mean, those are some long-term goals. Are there anything short-term goals that you hope to realize or changes that you would hope to see that might be galvanized by perhaps some of these changes that are ongoing?
The first changes that we made were in the medical management of the hospital, because I believe that it's unconscionable that we should have patients dying in the parking lot of the KHMH. So changes were made to the medical management. Those changes are ongoing. We have the situation where oftentimes patients go to the KHMH and they are not able to access treatment because X or Y specialist isn't available. Under the able guidance of our Acting Director of Medical Services, Dr. Adrian Koyi, we are setting in place measures to be able to make a wider range of specialists available for the public. I think that you are all aware that towards the middle of 2020, we lost services for the dental surgeon, for one of the supporting intensive care specialists, and for the ophthalmologist. We need to recover those services, and that's what we're looking at. So certainly, it starts with the medical care that we give to our patients, but also above and beyond that, we are looking to increase our cooperation with foreign partners like PAHO, also having closer cooperation with the Ministry of Health, looking at more integrated management of disease conditions like diabetes, hypertension, dialysis treatments, and so on. So we are looking to take medicine to a more profound level. And part of the efforts that we are undertaking is to reform the training of our doctors and indeed of our nurses within the institution. My hope, my dream is that we will convert the KHMH into a true teaching hospital. Nice. So that will bring up the level, but also not only training our nurses and doctors and other personnel in the art of medicine, but also looking at our interaction with our clients, with our patients. Our focus will be on human rights, because if you understand what the human rights of your patients are, what the human rights of the workers of our institution are, I think we will be in a better place. But also looking at ongoing and constant customer care training, which has been one of our weak points, admittedly.
And what about being able to ensure that you can collect for services offered at KHMH? I know you've worked with KHMH as a specialist, as you said, for 20 years, but you also know that the difference between KHMH and the private sector is that you must ensure that you can pay for your service in a private sector before you get specialized care. In the KHMH, especially when you're talking emergency, it's not the same. How do you imagine that you'll be able, one, to collect on outstanding debt, but also ensure that moving forward, people can still get treatment without being, having to be forced to prove that they can pay?
Well, you know, admittedly, some people just won't be able to pay. And we have to be sensitive to that, and we have to find a way so that those people who can't pay, their portion is covered from other areas and from other people who can pay. A big part of the problem has been ours. We haven't been diligent enough, for example, to collect from clients who have insurance coverage that hasn't been pursued adequately. We also provide services to workers who are injured in the line of their work and who are covered by the Employment Injury Scheme. We haven't been diligent in doing that. So what we foresee is a big shakeup of the collections department of our hospital, and indeed the finance section of our hospital. So a lot of internal reform has to be had, and the message is clear now that we have to have a different attitude, and we expect more from our employees.
Now, Dr. Sosa, with all your experience and your time that you've worked at KHMH, you know, it's always a dream that it will become the type of tertiary level institution that the country deserves and needs. Tell me what motivates you to take the time to be able to get us there, and whether or not it's practical that we'll be able to reach that within 4 or 5 years.
It must be an ongoing process, and I've talked the talk like a lot of my colleagues, and now I'm walking the walk. I grew up in an era where there was a mindset. I don't want to say socialist, but indeed we grew up in the era when George Price used to visit our schools. I don't think that all of us can say that, but yes, I was a primary school student when George Price, the Honorable George Price, would visit our school. And, you know, we were instilled by an attitude of service. We grew up in the time of when Zimbabwe became independent, when a lot of other countries became independent, and there was this optimism about third world countries being able to progress to a better place. That feeling lingers, and it's shared by a lot of people of my generation. We are the people now who have to push. And so there will be others who come after us who will have to take up the mantle, but now is our time to really and truly push the agenda along, the agenda for development.
And you mentioned it earlier, it's worthwhile exploring further. The first kidney transplant will take place at KHMH. Tell us about being able to put that together and the significance of what that will have in the country.
As I said before, we have endeavored to bring to Carl Huchner professionals who previously were not available for us. We are lucky to have with us Dr. Byron Simmons, who recently returned from Mexico, where he did training with kidney transplant. We have a number of other talented doctors in country who are supporting this effort, and with the coordination and guidance of Dr. Koi, we are going to make that happen. So it's, I think, a natural progression from the dialysis service that are presently available. There are dialysis units popping up all over the country. Kidney disease is a big problem, as you all are aware, not only here but throughout Central America. You know, people are tied to dialysis, which is hugely expensive, and we want to free them from that. That is at one end of the spectrum, but we also need to focus on the basics as well, which is why we want to partner with the Ministry of Health to better coordinate management, from nutrition to medical care of of kidney patients, and so on. So we're looking at both ends of the spectrum, but we are also trying to solve in country problems that before were out of our reach.
Yeah. I don't think a lot of people realize that for many people, dialysis is long-term. And in fact, the only way they would come off dialysis is through a kidney transplant. Has the patient been identified already?
Yes, Marlene, identified. The necessary tests and preparations have been made. So we are very close to executing the process.
Big achievement. Now let's talk about COVID before we start to close off. We are looking at an increase in cases at this moment. We're about over 150 active cases. Not where we have been in the past, but definitely moving in the wrong direction. What is the preparation currently taking place at the KHMH in the event that we see the type of surge that we saw at the end of last year and beginning of this year?
Well, we had to reopen our COVID ward in the middle of last month. Presently, we have 3 patients, confirmed cases admitted. We are on standby for expanding to the overflow areas if necessary. Obviously, with 3 patients, that isn't necessary yet. So we are vigilant. We are prepared.
Number of beds available?
We can expand to a total of 43 beds with all the different areas and spillovers.
Okay. And for intensive care? Those on ventilation that?
Well, you know, we recently got from the Ministry of Health and Wellness through the help of our minister a number of different ventilators and the necessary support equipment. So right now we have the necessary numbers of ventilators for research. We are certainly in a far better place than we were last year. The big issue, as we said previously, is with numbers of nurses. If the cases do increase exponentially, what happens in those cases is that as we need more and more nurses, we have to close down other areas and pull nurses from those areas to cover. That is not an ideal situation, because if we have to close our patient clinic, for example, then that means patients have to wait longer times for their surgeries. Patients who might be unstable with different conditions might not be able to get their treatments in a timely manner, and because of that, we tend to start to see complications down the road. So we hope that does not become necessary.
And the vaccine status of the KHMH workers, doctors, nurses?
I think we're at about 87 or 89% vaccinated for our staff, which is pretty good, I think. No?
Yeah. Any closing words, Dr. Sosa? The microscope is on KHMH at this time, and you said you welcome the scrutiny. What do you say to the public who are very reliant on quality care that KHMH can deliver?
To be patient with us, that they should not be alarmed by what they see. It is a rejuvenation process, but that the purpose of that is to make sure that they are able to get the kind of care that they see on TLC and Discovery Channel and all those medical shows that people love so much. That is where we want to go, because COVID has taught us that when the borders close, we have to solve our problems nationally. And you know, we are coming on the 40th anniversary of independence. It's about time that we as a country are able to handle our candle, as the saying goes. It's not enough to say we are independent. We have to prove we are independent. We have to be rid of this colonial mentality that somebody will come from outside to save us. Certainly we value our international partners, and that is always important. But in the end, we are responsible for our own country, and we have to do our utmost best to make sure that every day we work to make that happen.
Well, we appreciate you coming in to tell us about what is currently ongoing. We know the nursing shortage is the big issue and of course the concerns with the management staff, but definitely we can only wish you the best because it is such a critical part of our healthcare system in this country.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And with that, we're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we'll be joined by the outgoing Chargé d'Affaires of the U.S. Embassy, so please stay tuned.
This COVID update was brought to you by Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price, but stay for the service.
Working off-site doesn't mean you have to be off your game. Studies have shown that simply adding a keyboard and mouse to your laptop increases productivity by 26%. Add a monitor and you'll be 35% more productive. At Fulltech Systems, we have what you need to enhance your remote work or e-learning experience. With devices such as headsets, video conferencing monitors, webcams, keyboards, mice, docking stations, all with the brands you trust. Keep connected with collaboration tools like Microsoft 365 Suite and Kaspersky and perform efficiently no matter where you are. Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price, but stay for the service.
As one of the largest cable and internet providers in Belize, CBC strives to provide our customers with the highest standards of quality, value, and service in all aspects of cable TV and internet. Monitoring our systems closely, our technicians combine creative planning and state-of-the-art technology with years of experience and training to develop and provide the most reliable and advanced cable and internet service to exceed your expectations. For CBC and our team of talented engineers, technicians, and customer service representatives, delivering less than the very best is never an option.
Smart continues to expand its internet coverage countrywide to help you live a smarter life.
Our villagers are very happy. They are pleased to know that Smart went the extra mile to put a tower in our village so that our villagers can get live stream on their TVs and they can get their kids doing their online classes. I want to say to Smart, thank you for making it possible for us to get internet in Gardenia Village. We really do appreciate it.
Smart continues to take the internet and mobile services to communities across Belize. Now save even more when you bundle your Smart broadband with Smart mobile services. Smart, bringing people together.
Dwayne Moody, Isani Cayetano, Andrea Polanco, Paul Lopez. Your News 5 Belize teams do whatever it takes. Go wherever they need to go, so you can catch the story wherever you are, whenever you want, on whatever device. Channel 5 Belize on television, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Because news is now everywhere, all the time. And so are we.
And we'll be back in a few, so stay tuned. Thanks, Jen. Hey there, we know you have to head out to work shortly, but don't forget that you can stay tuned by watching us on our Facebook live stream. Find us at Open Your Eyes BC, and you can continue watching there. You can also download Facebook Watch on your streaming device, and you can watch at your own convenience.
And for all the behind-the-scenes fun, follow us on Instagram at OYE Belize. So,
find us
and follow us
today.
When someone you love becomes a memory, the memory becomes a treasure. Channel 5 introduces the Daily Obituaries. The Daily Obituaries will broadcast all death and funeral announcements and memorials to honor your loved one's life and memories. The Daily Obituaries airs on Channel 5 prior to the evening newscast, with subsequent repeats at 10 p.m. and 12 noon the following day. It will also be placed online on our social media platforms, all for a standard package fee. Celebrate their lives and memories with Channel 5's Daily Obituaries. Honor in life and reverence in death.
And we're back. And if you're joining us right now, we're just getting our second conversation for this morning started. And we are joined by Keith Gilgis, who is the outgoing Chargé d'Affaires from the U.S. Embassy of Belize. Good morning.
Gavin, Marlene, good morning. It's so great to be back on your show.
No, it's great to have you here, and it's great to have you in the studio.
In
right?
person, I know. It's kind of bookended, you know, starting 3 years ago in person, and then we were remote for a little while, so it's nice to be back in person.
Yeah, but of course, since you bring it up, why don't we start talking about the beginning of that 3-year journey, and let's go back in time a little bit, and let's talk about when you first got here. So, sort of, what were your expectations, if any, and how you felt at that time starting working right here in Belize?
Yeah. So, gosh, I arrived. It was late July of 2018, and it's hard to believe that that's almost 3 years ago already. And I remember I spent the first 2-3 months or so just saying, hey, I want to get out and about. And there were a couple events that the media showed up to, and they're like, hey, we'd love to talk to you. And I was like, hey, give me a little time. Let me find my way around. Let me sort of understand Belize a little bit better before I start talking to the media. And then this was, I think, the very first show that I did, probably in October, November, you know, way back then. And I said at the time, this is not let me pop in, say hi, and then I'll show up 3 years later to say goodbye, but it'll be a conversation. And we'll keep talking about the key issues that are coming up and engaging with you, engaging with the public. And it has been, in the words of Jerry Garcia, you know, what a long, strange trip it's been, particularly these past 18 months. But it's just been, you know, as I've said, the honor of my lifetime so far to have this opportunity to serve here.
Who would imagine that in 3 years, half of that time you'd be spent living in a pandemic?
It is remarkable. I will say this, besides how well Belize has handled the pandemic, if you were going to choose, and we did not know this at the start of the pandemic, but if you were going to choose a place to be, I don't think you could have picked a better place than Belize to go through this pandemic. It's been remarkable. But what an amazing place to be during this challenging time for everybody.
Yeah, it also meant, you know, from a work point of view, that in rolling out some of the projects that you were going to do, they shifted. We saw quite a bit of support coming in for COVID relief and for being able to cope through the pandemic. Talk about being able to pivot at the time when the pandemic started and ensuring that you were still offering the type of support that the country needed.
Yeah. Well, again, the idea is that as part of our partnership with Belize, it's not just what we want to offer, but what does Belize need, and making sure those things are lashed up. So we had a grant, to help with COVID through UNICEF, and then the floods hit. And UNICEF came and said, hey, we'd like to pivot because right now the immediate need is not just PPE or other supplies. It is sanitation equipment, it is sanitation supplies, it is housing and bedding and all these things for people that were impacted by the floods. And they said, hey, can you pivot? Absolutely. Do where the need is. And then we were able to recently complete that grant, getting back to sanitation issues. There were some interesting other things that came about because of COVID. My public affairs shop wasn't able to do a lot of the programming it had planned, and these things are planned pretty far in advance and budgeted pretty far in advance. So there's no money left over at the end. But then when suddenly we couldn't do those projects, there was an opportunity to do something else.
Yeah.
And that ended up becoming the Empowering Communities to Empower Themselves program.
Yeah.
And that was getting into local communities where there are people who are starting their lives over again after having been guests of the Colby Foundation, or having been former gang members. And again, to turn what had been a challenging thing into something that was an opportunity for Belizeans was incredibly rewarding.
Tell us about your personal experience in that, getting to meet the young men. This is a very interesting program, because you're absolutely right. Someone comes out of prison and it's very tough to get a job opportunity. So creating a space where employment is possible and possible for others as well is really important in being able to have that transformation outside of the prison. What was your experience like?
So in the position that I'm in, I'm charge d'affaires. So people say, oh, he's a fancy man, and I get to, wear nice suits and sip champagne. That's sort of the image of it. So being able to say, I'm going to go down and meet some folks that have had a tough time, but they made the choice to turn their lives around. We didn't have to convince them. They had to make those tough choices. And then to be able to go in and say, we can help you some. You're helping yourself most of the way. We can help out, and have some faith and trust in you that you're going to continue down this path and turn yourselves around, which helps your communities turn around. For me to get to engage with folks, take off the jacket, go down, talk to people, is the rewarding part of the job. Yes, I get to talk to other high-level people a lot of the time. That's the government-to-government thing. But is that what you remember? Or is it when you were able to touch the lives of people and say, hey, we made a difference there? And again, it was mostly my team doing the work, but I get to show up and meet the people.
Yeah.
And that's what is so rewarding.
Any insights that you walk away with after having conversations with them?
Just the power of the choice of an individual to say, I wasn't given a lot. I had a lot of strikes against me, but I can choose to do something different. And what's so interesting in talking to them is they aren't talking about themselves. They're talking about the people that they're able to help. They're talking about the folks that are coming into the One Stop Auto Shop, or the folks at Yarborough that are coming in and saying from the community, hey, can you help me? What's an opportunity? And the impact that they're having. Because when you see that, you're like, this is going to work.
Yeah.
If they're getting the reward back from helping other people, that is what community is about, right? That's the definition of community. So this program, empowering them to help themselves, that's exactly what it is. And that's incredibly rewarding for me to see.
So the time that you've been here, there was a lot going on. When the pandemic was just, that's just one. You had the U.S. election taking place. We had a referendum for the ICJ. And so the involvement of the U.S. Embassy has been very prominent. Let's take a moment to recognize, too, that you also served as charge at a time where we have not had an ambassador for quite some time.
It's been since 18 months before I arrived.
Yes.
And so then I have served as charge. And we said ad interim at the beginning, which is the Latin term at the end of my title, which means I'm charge for the time being. A country can send a charge and they're just the charge and they're not sending an ambassador. I'm the deputy chief of mission. I'm the number 2 person. But in the absence of an ambassador, I took on that role. And so my Latin joke is that I haven't really been the charge ad interim. I've been the charge ad nauseum, until it made everybody sick. but it is something that we're looking forward to having an ambassador here because, listen, we're short-staffed. If you don't have an ambassador, then I step up into that role. Somebody else from my line supervisor staff has to step up and be acting deputy chief of mission. And so you just have fewer people. So having an ambassador here has a symbolic impact for the embassy. It also has a practical impact. And listen, we expect that the administration will be naming people relatively soon. I have no inside information on that. We are all curious. I'm looking at the papers every day. But I know that this is something that the president takes very seriously and very personally. As former head of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, he was responsible for the committee that confirms every ambassador. So this is something that throughout his career he's been involved with. So he is taking seriously. And in a bit of a change from the prior administration, is looking much more at promoting people who are professional diplomats to various positions around the State Department and overseas.
The general perception is that when we don't get an ambassador named, is that the country relation is kind of a lower priority. How do you respond to that?
Every relationship we have bilaterally is important to us, or we wouldn't have a mission here. And yes, we haven't had an ambassador, but if you drive by our building in Belmopan, I think that's a pretty clear statement of our commitment. If you look at the number of other Foreign Service officers who are here, and we're close to 40 of us, and compare that to any other mission, I think it's pretty clear how much we value this relationship. Now, the person at the top matters, and it's important, and yes, we'd like to see an ambassador here soon. I'd like to see an ambassador here soon. But the nature of the relationship is also everything else. I'm here, and I've had a much more public role than I would have as deputy, because that's somebody needs to be out in front. But again, I take credit for all the amazing work that my staff does, and all 40 of them, and the 130 or so Belizeans who work at the embassy, all do this amazing work, and I'm incredibly proud of that. Yes, it is important to have an ambassador, and yes, we'll have one here, but that is not a symbol that there is any disagreement between the U.S. and Belize, or that there's that we're trying to send a message by not having an ambassador. It just hasn't happened yet.
Sure. And I did want to ask, sort of similar to what Marlene asked earlier, but on a more personal note, what was it like for you being sort of at the helm during all of this sort of very tumultuous times politically, and with all of COVID, and perhaps some of what you've learned on the job, from your experience so far?
Wow, I can't even begin to express how much I've learned from doing this. I think the answer that I'm supposed to give is, oh, it's been a lot of work and long hours and the stress and the struggle. It has been the joy of my life so far. It has been so much fun. And if you're going to choose a place to have a job like I have for the past 3 years, again, I look at Belize. We're such good friends. I don't have to worry about the media making up stories about me to try and discredit me, as happens in a lot of places. I don't have to worry about a constantly antagonistic relationship. I don't have to worry about the people of Belize yelling mean things as I walk down the street or anything like that. So this is a pretty amazing place because there is such an affinity between Belizeans and Americans. Listen, Belizeans get Americans. You understand where we're coming from. And so we're able to come here and not stand out or be different. And so I'm incredibly grateful for that. In terms of what I've learned, well, just this whole job, and the opportunities to engage. A lot of my learning has been internal, how to run an embassy from the position that I'm in, how to realize that if I walk by and say, or on my staff, boy, when did we paint that red? That might be interpreted as, oh, paint it back to whatever color it was. And so I have to be careful what I say because words matter and intent matters. And when I say, hey, can we make sure we put the garbage away out by my house so my dog's not eat chicken bones? And suddenly folks say, oh, he doesn't want any food on the compound. It's like, no, let's be careful here. So I've learned a lot over these past 3 years.
Yeah. Let's do a recap of some of the big programs that you have spearheaded, and we brushed past the ICJ. That was a very
that was huge.
Yeah,
that was if you remember back to 2018 and 2019, that sucked all the oxygen out of the room.
Yeah.
For all those months and years.
And, you know, and I think perhaps the time of the USA election, it was a time where people were really paying attention to what you would say as the head of the mission here in the country and what side you were on or where you seemed more inclined. Talk about that, being able to stay the course of representing your government, even when people are so critical of your positions.
You know, I represent the people of the United States. I serve the policy of the administration that is elected by the people of the United States, and my loyalty is with the Constitution of the United States. There were issues, as in any country under any administration, that some people are going to disagree with. My responsibility is to say, what are our long-term strategic policy goals that we want to achieve? And in many ways, not get involved in what is effectively domestic politics in the U.S. So, you know, I've been asked questions, you know, on this set and other places, and I can back away and say, hey, really, that's domestic U.S. politics. What I'm here to talk about is the relationship with Belize. And that hasn't changed. That didn't change between the previous two administrations, and it hasn't changed that much now. I would say one difference in terms of the policy priorities, it's still important that we tackle the transshipment of drugs through Belize because they're going to the U.S., but it has a corrosive effect on Belize. The continued recognition of Taiwan as an important partner and a great relationship. Concern about migration moving through the region. You know, those are three big issues. One thing that I didn't talk about as much in the prior 2.5 years that I've talked more about in the past 6 months is climate change. That's back on our agenda. So that's one of those policy shifts where I say, hey, listen, the administration is not, the previous one is not making climate change a big deal. So I'm not going to spend as much time talking about that. I won't have as many programs that I can bring to bear. This administration comes in, I say, okay, I will start talking about that more.
Because the policy has changed.
Because we've rejoined, you know, COP. It has been clear that dealing with climate change is dealing with economic policy, so it's been reintegrated. And, you know, does that mean I'm spending that much more time in my day on climate change? No, but we can start targeting messaging. We can bring programs to bear as they come online.
And it's great that you've had the experience in Belize because you can speak of the effects here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And the secondary effects, you know, where is all the sargassum coming from? Is it a result of climate change? Is it a result of effluent from rivers? Because that impacts the beaches and that impacts tourism. All these things are interconnected, and to be able to get out and about and see that on the ground makes a huge difference.
So early in your time here, you were looking at some of the work that was ongoing with the U.S. Embassy through the CARSI grant. There were some investments made in reinforcing our defense forces here, training as well. Let's talk about some of the highlights over the past 3 years that stand out to you.
Sure. You know, the CARSI program is, again, one of those long-term investments we're making because of Belize that's democratic, prosperous, secure, peaceful, all those things. Listen, that's good for Belize. That's also good for the U.S. That means, you know, a reliable, stable partner in a region that has some troubling countries in it. And so that investment is made over time and looking toward the long haul, whether that's our military-to-military investment that's going on, whether that's through the CARSI INL to help with police and other security forces. Now, I think we've invested about $42 million over the past few years in these programs. But again, we don't say, here's what you should do. Set a general target. Hey, we're interested in pursuing anti-trafficking. We're interested in pursuing programs that improve the efficiency of government. Come to us with your ideas. We will look at all the various grant options, have a committee that scores it all, pick the best one, work with them to make that even better, and then there's the money. Go do good things and let us know the results. And that's also builds up the capacity of civil society organizations here. So CARSI ESF, those CARSI grants have been great. The military-to-military financing has been incredibly important as well.
Of all the programs and projects, what stands out to you the most?
Oh, gosh. Maybe that's a little bit like, which is your favorite child?
I didn't say favorite. I said stands out.
Stands out. Well, it can't help but be what we've done most recently.
Yeah.
But I do want to go back and say what was so important for the first 9 or 10 months that I was here was the run-up to the referendum.
Yes.
And again, at the end of the day, we didn't take a position on that. We just said, know the facts.
Yeah.
Don't let fear be what guides your actions, because people don't make good decisions out of fear. But learn it, know it, and the government did a great job getting that information out to people. And then that referendum took place, and it was peaceful and open and incredibly well attended. I mean, all those things that are so impressive.
Yeah.
And it then said, yes, we're going to go to the ICJ. So I was able to sort of take that one and say, okay, I'll continue to pay attention, but I can move that pot to the back burner, and things have continued to pay. So then we look through that early on to our engagement more recently in all sorts of programs. Yeah, it's hard to single out any one because there are so many things that we work on together.
Yeah. So let's talk the personal experience in Belize now. Yeah. So you said you've learned quite a bit. Did you learn Tio Punta?
I did a version of it, I believe, and in fact, there's a video floating around somewhere of me at one of the Garifuna black, white, and yellow balls, and we were all out there, and I might not have been quite in time with everybody else, but I'm pretty sure I was doing some version of the Punta.
Well, what else will you take back with you, when you do go, that special about Belize that you've learned or that's become a part of you?
Well, Belize is, for a place that's not geographically that big, has such an incredible diversity. So I'm a diver. So to be able to get out, within 6 months of being here, my sister and her whole family came down, and we went and stayed out on one of the keys and dove the Blue Hole and all the reef around there. And so I got to share Belize with my family, and they've kept coming back. Even in these times, I actually have a cousin visiting me right now who I think is taking my car and is on her way to Zunantanich to tour around. So to get to see all these things, people will always say, I want to come to Belize, and they want to go to a key or go to a beach. And every time I say, hey, great, well, let's do that for a few days, but you got to go to the jungle. You got to go see the Maya Mountains. You got to go there. When they're leaving, and I ask them, what was your favorite part? It's always the jungle. And they always say, because you can go to beaches a lot of places, you can do diving a lot of places, but the jungle here and the opportunities to be driving along the road, which I have, and suddenly the tapir walks out and has a look around, and you slow down and just watch him or her, and then head back in. I was in the Chicabel Forest with Rafa Manzanero early one morning, climbed up the tower to see the sunrise, and 2 scarlet macaw fly by and land in a tree not far away. And a minute later, 2 of the large toucan fly by, and I'm like, oh, come on, have you planned this? This is too amazing.
Timed release.
Now I want a jaguar. But to have those sorts of opportunities, I mean, there aren't many places in the world you can do that and see them live flying around, and there it was on display. And so those sorts of moments, both the opportunity with the people and the nature that's here, it's just unique and incredible.
Yeah. And how's your Creole now?
So, starting with good morning, but I got to say, when anybody asks, I always say, well, this stuffy wee chicken,
That might be an ad. Somebody might use that.
Yeah, I'll be careful with that one. Sorry, I'm not meaning to, but I...
Yeah. And other memories, I'm so glad you noted that. So you'll say you worked some time in Belize, and people will, ask you about how beautiful it is and whether or not it's worthwhile to visit. But what else will you say about culture or people or experiences?
To get out and eat the food in a place is to know its people. And when I first went down to Garifuna Settlement Day, this would have been back in late 2018, showed up, and I was still finding my way around, and I didn't know as much as I should have about the Garifuna culture, but went down, saw the arrival ceremony, went to the church, did the full mass in Garifuna, which was amazing, and then went to the stadium What I hadn't planned was that I didn't bring a snack with me. And this was going on for a while, and I got hungry. And the woman who was showing me around, I said, hey, by the way, is there a place I can get a quick snack here? And she's like, well, my grandmother's place is a couple doors down. And so right after the event at Alejo Beni Park was done, we walked down there, and I went into her mom's kitchen, and she was making hudud.
Ooh.
And I was thinking to myself, boy, I should try and get that recipe. But it's also, I don't know that you can recreate the experience of having Grace's hudud in her kitchen, made with her hands of her love, and with Belize infused in all that food. I can try and make it somewhere else, but it's not the same as coming here and having the food here. And the same goes for all sorts of cuisine around the country. And I've eaten some very, very good food here. I will say also, I have a chef at home. I'm privileged enough to get to have that, usually for formal events and everything else. But when I don't have a formal event during COVID, she makes food for me. Her name is Stephanie Crawford, and she's local stuff. So I also eat fantastic Belizean food every day at home, made by a Belizean chef. So
nice. So you've learned to cook any of it?
So I like to think that I have various talents, but I'm not going to be so bold as to include cooking among them. I can follow a recipe, but it's not the same as watching a real artist at work.
All right. Now, I'm trying to figure out if we should ask you to do a bit more Creole or do the Punta Live. I don't know which one. Which one would be the best send-off for you? But Keith, I think one of the things that I wanted to ask is, you are going back to the United States at this time, at a time where they are actually at a new phase in the pandemic. They're reopening. People are going back to work. It's what we see or look forward to in our future, that light at the end of the tunnel. What does that signify for you?
Watching the process here and the difference it's made. Listen, we managed to cope. We're here with masks on, but we get to be in person.
Yeah.
When couldn't be in person, okay, I was sitting in my upstairs guest bedroom, staring at a computer screen, and we would do interviews remotely. Yeah. What I found was we are seeking to move to phase 3 of Diplomacy Strong. So that doesn't mean anything to anybody if you're outside the State Department, but it's what phase are we at in terms of reopening? We've started doing visa interviews again in person at the embassy, so we're trying to get down our backlog. We are also going to restrict so that third country nationals aren't flying into Belize to go to the embassy to get their visa, because I want to focus on Belizeans who need that, and I don't necessarily want folks traveling in from outside. So, we'll do some, but the focus is on Belizeans. But as I've transitioned back to going to the embassy and spending more time there and having the meetings in person and getting people together, I realized there is no substitute. You can't go from Zoom meeting to Zoom meeting and not have everything that happens on the margins, not having the personal interaction. And so I'm not worried at any point that we're going to say, gee, we can do all this remotely. We don't need the big building of getting people together. People need to get together. Let's use the tools we've learned. Let's continue where we can to learn from the Zoom and the Teams and the WebEx and everything else when that's useful. But getting together in person, there is no substitute for this.
I agree. I'm happy to have you here in person as well. And as we continue to roll out our vaccination program, as I said, the United States is further ahead. You've rolled out your vaccination to children as well. There is also a commitment for donations of COVID-19 vaccines. Tell us about where Belize fits into this and what's the status as of today?
Sure. From the announcement of 80 million vaccines from our stocks that were going to be distributed to, that was on, I think, June 3rd, to the June 10th announcement that we will be donating 500 million vaccines globally. So all that is complicated to roll out, and it's going to take a little bit of time. But while we've managed to vaccinate Americans, and we're well over 50% of Americans have had at least one dose. And as you see our numbers come down, that's also good for Belize, because those folks can travel, and it's a lot of Americans that support the tourism industry here. as frontline workers have been vaccinated. So very eager to get those vaccines out. What I don't know yet, and believe me, I'm asking, my staff is asking, because we want to know how many are coming here. And the answer is some, but I don't know how many. The folks that are making these decisions are saying, okay, what makes sense? Who has the capacity to take them? How quickly can they get there? Where's there the need? Belize is part of that mix.
Yeah.
I would love to have a number for you right now, because that would be a really powerful statement. I don't have it yet. I'm not sure. But while the number of vaccines we're giving out to Americans in the state is going down as the demand is being met, we are still trying desperately to reach the pockets of people that have been less interested in getting vaccinated. That hasn't slowed our production of vaccines in the States. And we're coming to this party and we're coming big. And we're going to keep rolling out those vaccines to the world because that's our commitment to all our friends and partners globally.
Yeah, of course. And we do have cold storage now too, so.
And I don't want to jump on my story for a couple days from now, but there might be a super cold refrigerator coming your way.
Okay.
That I'll be handing, which will mean that any of the Pfizer or other vaccines that require the deeper cold storage, you'll have that facility soon. But don't tell anybody I told you.
Excellent. Yeah, we'll keep it between us.
Keep that quiet.
That'll be between us. But so that means we'll eagerly await further donations. But it is a significant step, and I did want to make note of that. What are you going to be doing in your last? When are you leaving, and what are you going to be doing your final weeks or days here?
Well, getting out and seeing as many people as I can in a safe and responsible way. We have to realize there's been a little bit of a spike in cases here, and that's partly because the epidemiological teams are doing a good job of going out and looking for it, because that's what's important. You can't just wait for it to come in. So we're seeing a little bit of a blip. So, again, I'm fully vaccinated, but I'm wearing a mask. We need to protect each other. We need to not let our guard up until we get enough of those vaccines and enough arms and we see those numbers really drop away. We'll be dealing with COVID for a long time, but let's get to the point that we're successfully managing it and it's not managing us. So in my last 5 weeks or so here, I leave July 16th. If I can figure out how to get the dogs out, then I go back to Washington for a while. So it is trying to see as many people as I can. And sadly, then to say, okay, well, this is goodbye for a little while. And trying to get out to get a last few glimpses of parts of Belize before I go.
What's on that list? What place did you do not get to that you wish you would have had the chance to do?
I've done a pretty good job of getting around to see most things. I never made it up to the Gallon Jug area, but that would be interesting in some of those areas. But it ends up really being more about how can I see people, and places too. But really, it's about trying to see as many people as possible.
Then, did you have any favorite spots here that you never get tired of going back to?
Belize.
Just the whole thing.
It's fantastic to go and see new things. But yeah, there are a number of spots around here. Just driving up, into the My Mountains and Mountain Pine Ridge and going to Big Rock Falls and Freelon Pools and all those areas, you just have these caves that are amazing. I will say, ATM Cave in Belize is globally one of the most impressive things you can do. That is on a lifetime bucket list, and I've done it twice. And so, that's a great tourism ad for ATM Cave, but that is something that's just so uniquely Belizean and such an incredible opportunity to do.
Tell us about your most memorable experience in Belize. Not necessarily work-related, just something that kind of gave you that moment to say, I'm so happy I'm here in this country.
Oh boy, that's a tough question. When I was first arriving here, I climbed on the plane. So this is July 2018. And I was, again, getting back to my dogs, my little dog, Princess, my pot licker. I'm worried because I barely made the flight. Is she going to have made it underneath onto the plane? And I'm busy all frantic about my dog and pursers coming over, and the captain finally said, I took a picture, she made it to the flight, she's downstairs, all set, that's great.
Yeah.
And it's only at that moment that I realized the oncoming passengers were all saying, good afternoon, Mr. Barrow, to the person sitting next to me. And then I do one of those sort of sidelong glances, and I'm like, wait, Barrow?
Yeah.
The Prime Minister's name is Barrow. And sure enough, I'm sitting next to the former Prime Minister on the plane. And that was my introduction.
Great first impression.
I thought, do I say anything? It's one of those sort of strangely awkward
And your
moments,
dog really
because
is named Princess.
Now, I'm the crazy dog person. so I lean over and say, Hi, Mr. Prime Minister, my name is Keith Gilgis, and I'm the incoming Charge d'Affaires. I just wanted to say it's a pleasure to meet you. And he was very gracious.
Yeah.
And we chatted for a few minutes, and then the plane was taxiing. You know, he has some back issues. I can relate. I've had some too. And we were quiet the whole way down. Plane touches down as we're taxiing to PGIA. He just leans forward and says, well, let me be the first to welcome you to Belize. And I'm like, well, Mr. Prime Minister, I get to say, when I arrived, the first person to welcome me to Belize was the Prime Minister. And he joked at me and said, Keith, you can tell him I escorted you all the way from Houston.
That is a very good story.
And to start with a story like that, and to build the relationship with everybody, including the current Prime Minister when he was opposition leader, and be able to have those relationships across the board is amazing and such a fantastic opportunity. So that high-level stuff, that's pretty cool too. And to be able to do it in a way that's so down to earth. It's not the chargé talking to the Prime Minister a lot of the time. It's Keith talking to John, or it was Keith talking to Dean. And that's also such an incredible experience for me to have had during my time here.
Nice. All right. Well, I think what's going to happen now, Keith, we have a little bit of music that's going to come on. So I'm kidding.
Whoa.
No. We actually put together some clips from your visits that you've shared with us over this time. So we're going to take a look at that now. This is, it's only been 3 years, but you did say you wanted to guarantee as much access as we could get. And so we have a little clip compiled here. Let's take a look at that.
Hello. My name is Keith Gilgis, and I have the honor of serving as the new Chargé d'Affaires ad interim at the U.S. Embassy in Belize.
And welcome back. Of course, that was his personal introduction, but we now introduce to you, as we have on set, the U.S. Chargé d'Affaires, Keith Gilgis. Gilgis. With us. Good morning, and thank you for being here.
Good morning, Marlene. Kevin, thank you very much for having me on.
Of the U.S. Embassy to Belize, Keith Gilgis.
Thank you very much for having me back.
All right. Good morning and happy 4th.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Keith Gilgis. Good morning, Keith.
Good morning, Gavin. Good morning, Marlene. Great to be back, if not in person, at least remotely.
We have been joined online via Zoom by the Chargé d'Affaires for the U.S. Embassy, Keith Gilgis.
As a matter of fact, we've got Keith Gilgis. He's actually the Chargé d'Affaires at the U.S. Embassy of Belize. Good morning. We also
I look forward to continuing my travels and engaging with the diverse peoples, communities, and cultures that exist in this remarkable jewel of a country. So if you see me out and about, please come on over and say hi. I want to hear your stories. I want to know about your experiences. Thanks for listening to me, and I look forward to hearing from you.
There you go.
Wow. I did make it on a few times.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It's just like the duration of your time here. Half of it was in person, half of it was in Zoom. And it took us a while to get your name right.
I thought you did a really good job. Listen, I've got a weird name.
Yeah.
And what never happened is what happened to me when I was a kid and you had a substitute teacher. you know, if you see something you're not familiar with, you often try and turn it into a word you are familiar with.
Yeah.
And so the 2 middle letters of my last name would get transposed, and I would become Keith Giggles.
I think that's how I'll remember you.
It absolutely happens from time to time. Oh, here comes Mr. Giggles.
Did you often, did a lot of people get it wrong?
It's a weird name.
Oh, so you're used to it.
Giles is the usual one. What's that extra G doing in there?
Yeah.
And, you know, nobody wants to pronounce it in this weird way, so it's actually completely phonetic. Gilgis. It's just as it is. So anybody's like, well, I'm not going to do the simple one. There must be something more complicated there.
All right.
But you know what? Keith. I'm fine with Keith.
So what's next for Keith?
So after we leave here, get a little bit of time off. I get married, and then I start. Thank you very much. Then I start French language training in September, and I'll have that for 6 or 7 months until I can pass a test in French. And then next summer of 2022, I will be going out to Bujumbura, Burundi, where I'll be Deputy Chief of Mission at our mission there. So very excited about that. A very, very different challenge, but I'm sticking with the bees, right? From Belmopan, Belize to Bujumbura, Burundi.
And just before we close up, because we are running out of time, are there any final thoughts or words that you'd like to share with our viewers about, you know, your years here and your experiences in Belize?
Well, I am so grateful to you for the opportunity to come on to the show as often as I have and to talk about issues of mutual interest. You know, I'm so grateful to all the people of Belize who have been so welcoming, not just to me, but all the members of my staff, to all the American visitors that come in here. You know, as I said, it has been the honor of a lifetime to get to do this, and this has been such an incredible place. And so I'm grateful for the warmth of the people, the majesty of the ecology here and all that. So just thank you.
All right. Thank you, too. And now we close off with a little bit of punta that you'll be dancing. No, Keith, we won't do that to you. We want people to welcome you back. But we wish you the best. Thank you for being accessible. And, of course, thank you for sharing your final thoughts with us today.
Thank you for having me.
All right. With that, we're going to go ahead and take a break. And when we come back, we're going to be talking about the importance of sea turtles. So stay tuned.
Good morning, sweetie. It's time for school.
Are you a teacher or public sector employee who is thinking of owning your new home? Get the keys to your new home with Belize Bank's all-inclusive mortgage, the best financing option in Belize for your new home purchase or construction. Inclusive of all mortgage-related fees, no down payment, affordable terms, amazingly low interest rates. Visit our nearest branch to speak to one of our financial advisors to discuss how you can be one step closer to owning your new home. Some conditions apply.
"2020 taught us the importance of being connected to the virtual world, and NextGen is here to keep its commitment to you. Even if you're physically apart, NextGen keeps you digitally connected."
Okay, everyone, thank you for following me today.
NextGen provides more than just an internet plan. They provide service plans that support all your online needs. Sign up today and get your NextGen's ultra high-speed internet service. NextGen, powered by Central TV and Internet.
So stay tuned. Thanks, Jen. Hey there, we know you have to head out to work shortly, but don't forget that you can stay tuned by watching us on our Facebook live stream. Find us at Open Your Eyes BC, and you can continue watching there. You can also download Facebook Watch on your streaming device, and you can watch at your own convenience.
And for all the behind-the-scenes fun, follow us on Instagram at OYE Belize. So,
find us
and follow us
today.
When someone you love becomes a memory, the memory becomes a treasure. Channel 5 introduces the Daily Obituaries. The Daily Obituaries will broadcast all death and funeral announcements and memorials to honor your loved one's life and memories. The Daily Obituaries airs on Channel 5 prior to the evening newscast, with subsequent repeats at 10 p.m. and 12 noon the following day. It will also be placed online on our social media platforms, all for a standard package fee. Celebrate their lives and memories with Channel 5's Daily Obituaries. Honor in life and reverence in death.
Dwayne Moody, Isani Cayetano, Andrea Polanco, Paul Lopez. Your News 5 Belize teams do whatever it takes. Go wherever they need to go, so you can catch the story wherever you are, whenever you want, on whatever device. Channel 5 Belize on television, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Because news is now everywhere, all the time. And so are we.
And we're back. And we're just getting our third and final conversation started for this morning. And it is Sea Turtles Week, and we are talking all about the importance of these special marine creatures. And joining us for this conversation, we have Kira Foreman, who is a technical manager of the Hulchan Marine Reserve, and we also have Ronaldo Castro, who is a biologist at the Sapodilla Key Marine Reserve with the Fisheries Department. Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
Hi, good morning.
And thank you for joining us. Of course, we are really happy to talk about sea turtles and their importance. So, Kira, why don't we start by just talking about sea turtles and the role they play in our ecosystem here, and why it's important why we're shining the spotlight on them this week.
Yes, thank you all for this opportunity to talk about turtles this morning. Everybody that knows me knows this is a subject that I'm very passionate about. Turtles are very important. They're part of our ecosystem. They're one of the, we tend to not really look at them. We talk about fish a lot. We talk about the importance of corals, but we don't look at these, what we consider to be very charismatic creatures. They're one of they play a role and function. So they play a part in our food chain. One of the things that they do a lot is that through their feeding biology, they do add nutrients back into the system. They are very long-lived. They take up many different habitats. The part of their biology is that the females exit the water during a part of their life cycle to nest. And so they use not only the sea, but also the land. So they range they have a large home range, and they utilize several different ecosystems throughout their lifetime. So they are, because of these reasons, they're very important. For us here in Belize, one of the main importance that people often focus on is the fact that everybody knows turtles. Even if you live in some far off remote village or something, you talk about a sea turtle and it kind of gives you this awe and this sense of feeling towards turtles, even if you've never seen one in your life. You know, you have the little jewelry, everybody has something with a little turtle. So they're very charismatic. And for our tourism industry, they're important because people who come, they want to see turtles. They want to go out and get that one-on-one encounter and close-up interaction, and they lend themselves to that.
You know, until I knew we were having this conversation today, I never realized that I have not seen a sea turtle in the sea. As in, I'm diving or snorkeling and I see the turtle there. Let's talk about our population and just how prominent they are and the different species.
First thing, Marlene, we need to fix that. I'm extending an invitation to you to come to Hulchan to get your sea turtle experience.
Right?
Yeah, the population, because as I mentioned, they have a very large home range. The population is endangered. Here in Belize, we have 3 species, the loggerhead turtle, the green turtle, and the hawksbill. And they are endangered worldwide. Yeah. The hawksbill has, I think that's recently been removed because they've been the one that's been protected the longest, but the numbers are very low. Here in Belize, we track our nesting because that is where we usually get to see the nesting, and we do population estimate based on nesting. It's not the most accurate, I would say, because you still need to look at the different life stages, but we have seen some decline in the nesting populations, especially for loggerheads. I think today we're focusing, as part of the Sea Turtle Week, we're going to be focusing on green turtles for today. Oh, there's a video of the little hatchings.
Yes.
They're so cute when they're so tiny.
They are. And their survival rate, it's low, right? So even though we see a lot of turtles going out, not all of them survive.
Yes, and that's why they lay so many eggs. A female will lay anywhere between 75 to 100 eggs per nest. And you'll maybe get 1 or 2% of them hatching, surviving, yes. So they're very low, but they're kind of like a little tank. They're kind of like a little tank. They're extremely tough, and that's what's been able to that's why they've been able to survive for so long.
Yeah.
And Ronaldo, perhaps you can also chime in here and talk a bit about the work that you do and what some of the importance of turtles in that.
Well, in the Sapodilochy area, we have a lot of tourists visiting the area, and a lot of them goes by there mainly to see sea turtles, while snorkeling and so forth. So some of the work we do there are these nesting beaches that we have in Sapodilochy. We have about 9 nesting beaches, and we have turtles coming up each year during the period of May to October to come and nest. So, I mean, last year we had approximately 69 turtles coming up to nest within the Sapodilochy Marine Reserve. Like Kira mentioned, I mean, the survival rate is very low. We have like 1 turtle out of every 1,000 that hatch actually makes it to adult. So, I mean, it's very concerning that we need to protect our sea turtles and to be mindful of that. Some of the changes affecting sea turtles nesting is basically climate change. I mean, in last year, September, we had a lot of storms that eroded many of our beaches in that area. So a lot of nests was lost the nesting period of last year.
Yeah.
And is there any other sort of like activity that perhaps that we do that might affect the way, or the healthy population of turtles?
Well, in terms of garbage disposal, no plastics in the water. Many of the turtle feeds on jellyfish, and at times they would mistake these plastic bags for jellyfish and would eat plastics, and then they would suffocate and die. In terms of the nesting, people would go on the beaches, light fires, to do barbecues and so forth, and that could affect nesting, because probably they won't know a turtle had nest in that area, and they just build a fire over a nest that would cause the loss of all those eggs.
Yeah, humans are the biggest threat to the turtle population, and this is worldwide. As Ronaldo mentioned, the with garbage disposal, the use at the beach. They do use the beach. They do the females exit the water annually to nest. And so some of the things we've seen is people putting up seawalls in nesting beaches. We just recently had a nest where the female comes up every 2 to 3 years. So one female will not come back every single year. So it's not the same female nesting annually. So she'll return every 2 to 3 years. And she came back this year just to find that most of the beach area has been barricaded by a seawall. And she just fortunately found the one little gap in between the two seawalls. When people purchase their new, especially here in Ambergris-Caye, which is one of the largest nesting beach next to Gales Point here in the country, when people purchase their property, maybe they're not informed, maybe they don't know that it's a nesting beach, and then because they're worried about erosion, they're worried about their property, so they put up these barricades to hold in the sand, and then the turtles, of course, they won't be able to walk over. This particular site that I'm referring to, we have data going all the way back to the late 90s that we have nesting within that area. So what the activities of humans are the biggest threat to the population. Bycatch in netting is another issue. And these things are not something that here in Belize we can just tackle in isolation. A female that would nest or they would breed here, they may be living in Costa Rica, they may be living in some other part of the Caribbean, and they travel many, many miles just to come and lay their eggs. And so what happens in these other countries are also of concern to us. So here in Belize, we recently banned gill nets, but it doesn't mean that the threat to the population isn't still there, because it is legal in other countries. And so a lot of the impacts and a lot of the threats are human related. As Ronaldo had mentioned, we enjoy the beach on the weekend. We go and want to encourage people to do that. But we need to be mindful during the nesting season. We remove our garbage. We need to, if you're going to the beach within a nesting area, you don't want to trample over the nest.
Yeah.
And these are little things that we need to be mindful of.
Some people who own properties along beaches, they're very good at taking care of nesting sites. But not everyone may know how to recognize them. What are the signs that you should look for?
The best way to describe what it looks like is like a little mini tractor going up your beach.
Okay.
The tracks look similar like tractor tracks.
Okay. So once you see those tracks on the beach, that means that a turtle came out to lay its eggs?
Yes. And they usually come out in the late evenings or at nighttime.
And I think there's also, when there are some groups, conservationist groups, they have identified nests. Either they put, like sticks with a little flag or something on it, but a lot of times people don't actually know that it's a turtle nest. So can you talk a little bit about sort of different ways that, conservationists or people actually do identify so that people know what to look out for?
Here what we do is we do flag them. We use flagging tape a lot, and we do mark them. We write little notes on the sticks that we use. We try to make use of what we have on the beach, so we'll pick up driftwood or things like that, and we write it on it. So we'll have a little code, and we put a flagging tape, so right where the nests are. We have another group here in Ambergris-Caye who's been doing a great job. They've been putting up signs near the nesting beaches so that people know when they're in an area. Because we have had people vandalize the net. They've intentionally removed the flags, intentionally removed the markers. And historically, people did used to eat the eggs here. We haven't seen a lot of that. So I applaud the public in respecting the nest and not removing the eggs. But still, when you're removing the tags, it makes it difficult when we go back, because one of the things we look at as well is the hatching success. So we go when we identify, unless we go back again, we dig it up after it has hatched. It usually takes about 50 to 60 days to hatch. And then we see how many made it out, how many survived. And that way we know what the hatching success of our beach is. So when people remove these markers, it makes it difficult when we go back again, especially over time with the rain and the wind. The tracks that were made early on, they're gone.
Oh, they're just so cute. I know. But, you know, we look at it and we think it's cute, but we do know that some of the threats also include not just pollution, but people wanting to get the meat, or they want the shell. How much do we still face those types of threats?
We still do. It's we're trying to assess what's the rate of the take for shell. We do get reports of turtle jewelry being sold on the black market. And we have gotten last year, we got several reports of the meat. So we're still trying to track it. What we rely on, because it's is people to report it. You know, you can report it anonymously if you know of someone engaged in these activities. This is an illegal activity. It carries a hefty fine. So you need to, we encourage, I should say, people to report when they see or if they hear of it. Because it usually happens in isolation. Last year we had several different reports. We narrowed it down to location, but we're not able to track down the persons responsible.
Okay.
But it is a delicacy in Belize. Historically, we have eaten it in the past.
To add to what Kira have been saying, in terms of how we do our nesting monitoring in the Sapodilla Key, because I've been to Barbados in 2019 and I've gained a lot of experience working with them with sea turtle, and they usually don't mark their nest. They would take a GPS coordinate, they would try to cover up all tracks and so forth, because for a reason of poaching, some people would try to go and harvest the eggs, some people eat the eggs. In Sapodilla Key area, we have tourists that visit from Guatemala and Honduras, and if they would notice a nest or something and no one is watching over them, they would probably dig up the nest and take eggs, because I mean it's something they eat over there. So my experience in Barbados, they usually don't mark the nest, they just take a coordinate. They would use a small piece of stick or a marker that they would bury inside the nest, about 10 centimeters inside the nest, with the information stating, you know, the date it was laid, the date they discovered the nest, how many eggs are in the nest, approximate date of hatching, the species, and so forth. You know, and in terms of people developing on the beach or anything, the Barbados Sea Turtle Program, they would have to be contacted before any kind of development, any kind of beach activities being conducted, and then they would revise their data, their database, and to see if any nest is in that area before any kind of activity could be conducted. So that's a good way of how they have been keeping good eyes on their nests.
Okay. All right. So what type of activities are going to take place for Sea Turtle Week?
Here for us here in the north, in San Pedro, one of the things that we will be doing, and the public can look out for this, we'll be doing a little online trivia. We have a bunch of small giveaways. And so our education and outreach coordinator will be posting questions for people to answer and to win small prizes. This is a nesting season, by the way. So we're going to be out monitoring the beaches. We have several reports. It has begun. We have nesting going on. So we will be monitoring. So this week and next week, we try to do it weekly during the nesting season.
And for people like me who want to see the turtles in action safely, where's the best place to see them?
In terms of seeing the nesting?
No, not the nesting, the turtles themselves.
Well, I'm a little bit biased, so I will say come to Hulchan Marine Reserve. He will say go to Sap Keys. Anywhere there, out in the reef, you have the opportunity to come in contact with them. In Hull Chan, we do have some resident juveniles that feed within the area, so your chances is a little bit higher. But it depends on who you ask, Marlene.
Okay. All right. Well, Hull Chan is closer. That's one thing. But I will say, Sapodilla Keys are some of the most gorgeous islands in this country. So you got something for you there, Reynaldo.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah. All right. Well, we do thank you for telling us all about the importance of sea turtles. Of course, looking at them, they're so majestic and such. But as you noted, a critical part of the marine ecosystem. So we hope that people have learned about what we can do to reduce the risks for them so that they can continue to grow in population size. Thank you both for joining us.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
All right. And with that, we're going to go ahead and take our final break. And when we come back, we'll have our wrap up. So stay tuned.
Hola, Tony.
Hey, Kevin, ¿qué onda? ¿Qué pasa?
Nada, le vine a buscar porque necesito comprar más mercancías de vasos y platos desechables para mi tienda de comestible. Me estoy quedando sin esas cosas.
No, hombre, fíjate que desde el 15 de abril no puedo importar nada de eso. Y se me acaba de terminar todo lo que tenía hace como 3 semanas.
Oye, pero nunca has estado sin esas cosas. ¿Qué está pasando?
Mira esto. Esta es la nueva ley que prohíbe todo el uso de plásticos no reutilizables. Esos son vasos, platos, cucharas, tenedores, todo eso. Desde 15 de abril de este año no he podido importar nada de eso. A partir del 15 de enero del 2021 nadie puede fabricarlo. 15 de abril 2021 nadie lo puede vender. Y a partir del 14 de julio del 2021 si alguien te agarra con eso, te multan.
Híjole, no sabía eso. Necesito cambiar algunas cosas. Les diré a mis clientes por qué esas cosas ya no están disponibles. Gracias, Antonio.
Así es, cuídate, man.
Good morning, sweetie. It's time for school.
Are you a teacher or public sector employee who is thinking of owning your new home? Get the keys to your new home with Belize Bank's all-inclusive mortgage, the best financing option in Belize for your new home purchase or construction. Inclusive of all mortgage-related fees, no down payment, affordable terms, amazingly low interest rates. Visit our nearest branch to speak to one of our financial advisors to discuss how you can be one step closer to owning your new home. Some conditions apply.
It's a fact that with Smart, you get truly unlimited everything. Only with Smart, you get unlimited data anytime, while with the other guy, it's only double data on weekends. With unlimited data every day with Smart, there's no need to wait. So, it's a fact that our unlimited plans beat the competition. Stop being measured and told when to use your data and get unlimited talk, text, and data. Experience the true unlimited plans with Smart. That's a fact. Make the switch and live smart.
We're just getting our show wrapped up this morning. We want to say thank you to all our guests. Of course, our first guest was Dr. Andres Sosa, who is the chairman of the board of directors of the Carl Heechner Memorial Hospital. He was giving us an update in relation to all that's been going on. We know that they've been making news because a lot has been going on at the hospital recently, so we want to thank him for coming in and giving us that update.
And we also want to thank outgoing Charge d'Affaires for the U.S. Embassy, Keith Gilgis, for coming in and having a final sit down with us. There was, of course, a lot to discuss, a lot of work done in 3 years, but it was also just an opportunity to hear from a familiar face that we featured on the show quite a bit about his reflection on his experience here.
And finally, we closed off the show by talking about Sea Turtle Week. And we want to thank Kira and Ronaldo for talking about sea turtles, their importance to the ecosystem and just Belize in general. And we want to remind you that all species of sea turtles are currently endangered. So we have to do our part to reduce any sort of harmful activity which might affect their population. And they're one of our most important assets, a great ambassador for Belize. Do your part, and if you're celebrating Turtles Week, send us some clips or some videos of how you can do it, of how you're doing it, sorry.
That's right. But that's all the time we have for today. If you'd like to contact us, send us an email at oye@channel5belize.com.
You can find us on Facebook at Open Your Eyes BZ and on Instagram at OYE Belize.
And remember to tune in tomorrow morning at 6:30 when you open your eyes.
Start your morning right.
Until then, keep your eyes, your mind,
and your heart open.
We'll see you soon. Enjoy your day.
Open Your Eyes was brought to you by the Belize Bank. Our country, your bank.